Assalamu alaikum everyone, and thank you first the organizers, Dr. Abdul Malik, Dr. Saleem Bidej, for inviting me to give this talk, and also thank you, बल्कि more thank you for the participants जो इस वक्त 1 बजे भी यहाँ बैठे हुए हैं पूरे दिन हेडेक सुनने के बावजूद. So thank you. और जब Dr. Abdul Malik ने मुझे ये टॉपिक कहा तो that reminded me of a task which is pending I think for the last 3 to 4 years that Dr. Fauzia, Dr. Naila and me and PSN planned to have a conference on women and neurological disorders, and unfortunately it's still pending. Hopefully आज वैसे बहुत ज़्यादा ख़वातीन नज़र आ रही हैं, young, energetic, enthusiastic. Even जो मेल कंसल्टेंट्स हैं उनके लिए भी है कि प्लीज़ हेल्प अस इन ऑर्गेनाइजिंग, बिकॉज आई थिंक दैट इज़ one thing that we need to know, we need to do. My first disclaimer is that I'm not a headache specialist, so please ignore if there is any mistake in that. और अगर कोई है तो उसके जो ज़िम्मेदार होंगे डॉक्टर मालिक होंगे, क्योंकि उन्होंने मुझे कहा था ये टॉपिक पे बोलिए, और सवाल भी आखिर में जो हैं दे विल बी डायरेक्टेड टू डॉक्टर अब्दुल मालिक बिकॉज ही इज़ द हेडेक स्पेशलिस्ट हियर. So nothing from my side to disclose except that I have taken a lot of material from Google and Continuum and all different sources. So just before going to the main topic, I just wanted to share this review that is recently published, and they talk about the stigma, the migraine stigma, and it's not just the public, the society. They don't consider migraine as a real disease. They don't consider it as serious. सबसे बड़ा प्रॉब्लम होता है हमारे यहाँ ख़वातीन आती हैं और वो उनके जो साथ में अकम्पनीड फैमिली मेम्बर्स होते हैं, उनका सबसे बड़ा प्रॉब्लम ये होता है कि इनके सारे टेस्ट हो गए हैं जिस पे ज़ाहिर है बहुत खर्चा हुआ है, MRI भी करा लिया है और वो सब नॉर्मल है. तो देन दे वांट लेबल फ्रॉम द फिजिशियन कि जी ये कुछ नहीं है और ये सब जो है ये साइकाट्रिक है, या अभी तक हम हिस्टेरिया वाले पे हैं. और उससे ज़्यादा इम्पॉर्टेंट ये कि दैट स्टिग्मा इज़ इंटरनलाइज्ड, दैट वुमन, दैट पेशेंट, that that used to self blame, there are negative thoughts in her, and that even can lead to suicidal ideations. तो जो डॉक्टर मालिक ने अपनी टॉक में भी कहा कि headache is not that is not benign, it is associated with a lot of morbidity, or wo we are going to discuss. So what we are going to do in my talk is that we just want to discuss initially what are the, why we are talking about it. Is it really worth doing? What are some of the main gender differences, basic mechanisms which underlies the migraine, and the differences that we had in between males and females. What are some of the main pregnancy outcomes that the patients may face who have migraine, and lastly the management. So as already you all know that it's one of the second leading cause of disability by the GBD. The overall prevalence is around 18 to 23%. It's reported up to 38% in some studies, and it's more common in women of childbearing age. Almost 30% experience migraine by the age of 45 years. And regardless of the region or specific country, this burden is positively correlated with their socio-economic demographics. In Pakistan, there are different studies, have quoted different studies, different numbers, but the overall one of the estimate is the prevalence is around 22.5%, which Dr. Malik presented in his study the prevalence up to 50%, but in all those studies, the common point is it's more common in females. And if we look into these prevalence rates, they are before puberty, they are almost equal. But the post-pubertal women have higher prevalence, they have higher pain intensity scores, they have longer headaches duration with increased the reoccurrence, with increased migraine related disability, and they also had more prevalence of cutaneous allodynia as compared to the male counterparts. And that migraine, as you know, अब तक हम समझते हैं, it's not benign. There is a meta-analysis that showed that migraine is associated with significantly increased risk of preeclampsia and low birth weight. The Danish population registry also find increased risk of pregnancy-associated hypertensive disorders, miscarriages, preterm births, and cesarean sections. And women who have migraine and aura, they are increased risk of stroke and are advised to avoid estrogen containing contraception. So the main biological mechanisms that underlies these differences is there is increased burden of cardiovascular now risk factors such as hypertension in women with migraine. There is endothelial dysfunction, hypercoagulability, and neuroinflammation that leads to increased prevalence of migraine and migraine-related disability in women. So this is just a table that shows that females, the males have this migraine onset a little earlier. The peak prevalence in females is in reproductive age. After puberty, the ratio increases from 3 to 4:1. And even the inactive migraine prevalence is more after 60 years of age in females. And it's a fourth leading cause of disability in women. The remissions are more shorter, but the clinical manifestations are similar. And the impact of quality of life is usually similar. So talking about the underlying mechanisms, सुबह मॉर्निंग से हम सुन रहे हैं regarding the different there is not just now vascular phenomenon, there is trigeminal inflammation and neurovascular inflammation. So in women, there are these additional these hormones that works. So estrogen increases the activation of NMDA receptors that leads to increased glutamate release, and that leads to increased excitability, and leading to increased cortical spreading depression and central sensitization. It also leads to increased release of pro-inflammatory neuropeptides, and that leads to neurogenic inflammation. There is increased release of nitric oxide signaling and more reduced serotonin synthesis. The progesterone, on the other hand, it works by increasing the inhibitory signals by the GABA neurons, and that reduces the cortical hyperexcitability. So progesterone somehow, decreases the occurrence of migraines by decreasing these inflammations and central sensitization. The testosterone, which is supposed to be, it's also, really works in the biological mechanisms of migraine by decreasing the cortical hyperexcitability, and it reduces the oxidative stress and increases the serotonin synthesis that leads to this HT receptor expression. So this is the diagrammatic representation that estrogen, by releasing glutamate, that leads to endothelial dysfunction, oxidative stress. But just a note that it's very simplified. It's still, with all this research, the biological mechanisms are very complex, because there are around 5 to 6 types of estrogen metabolites which circulates. The estrogen works on 2 receptors, and then there are other interplay between other hormones also. And then this is this trigeminal system in which prolactin and oxytocin also interferes with the migraine onset and symptom development, in which the prolactin is a pro-nociceptive agent while the oxytocin has anti-nociceptive role. So now coming to migraine during pregnancy. So when there is a slight levels of estrogen rises in the first trimester of pregnancy, the woman may experience transient symptom worsening, but as in the second and the third trimesters, 90% symptoms there is the reduction because there is hormonal stability and the progesterone levels rises. And in both migraine with and without aura, the migraine with aura are a subgroup who may be less likely to improve, and the migraine without aura is more affected by these hormonal imbalances. And patients who have persistent migraine symptoms, there is a 13-fold increase risk of having a hypertensive disorder in pregnancy compared with the patients who experience their symptoms resolution or whose symptoms remit during pregnancy. So this is just to show you that there is increase of estrogen level in the first trimester, so there may be worsening of symptoms of migraine, and as pregnancy progresses, there usually the migraine symptoms they reduces or they stabilizes. So before going into the management or the outcome parts, this is just a study which was done to see that what is the effect of migraines on women pregnancy plans. We talked that migraine improves during pregnancy, but despite this, especially the younger women who have migraines, they had this fear of conceiving because they thought that the medicines will have adverse effect on their fetus, or they will experience more negative symptoms and adverse outcomes during pregnancy. So that's why I think the education and counseling still needed. So during pregnancy, the main mechanism is hypercoagulability that in association with sleep disturbances, stress, nausea, and dehydration leads to hypertensive disorders, and that leads to complications like venous thromboembolism, strokes, and preeclampsia. So recently, this is a review that was published in Cephalalgia, which showed that women with migraine have a higher risk of preeclampsia compared to the women who do not have migraine. They have increased odds of having preterm births and placental abruptions. Similarly, they have higher prevalence of having low birth weight, small for gestational age, but it was not statistically significant, and peripartum mental illness. So this is just a forest plot that shows you that if you see that the preeclampsia, preterm births, and the low birth weights, they are more statistically significant, and they are more prevalent in patients who have migraine. So the association between low birth weight, small gestation for age, and placental abruptio, they are found more common in women with migraine, but they were not statistically significant. But preeclampsia and preterm birth were significantly more in patients who have migraine. So now we come to the management of migraine, which as a clinicians, we are very into it. So first thing that you have to counsel your patients on a positive note, that 80 to 90% of the patients have symptoms relief or remission during pregnancy, and they will have half of these women will return to their pre-pregnancy migraine levels within a month after delivery. And the guideline for management of the patients in pregnancy is that the care has to be individualized. There is not a one fit rule for everyone, and it has to be multidisciplinary. So we need to have a collaboration between a neurologist, gynecologist, endocrinologist, primary care providers, pain specialists, mental health professionals, and physiotherapist. So we need this team कि आप यहाँ कोई दवाई लिखें, गायनेकोलॉजिस्ट बंद कर दे, या माइग्रेन में भी होता है, एपिलेप्सी में भी होता है. And for acute attack, still paracetamol is the first line treatment, and but you have to monitor the dose because a high cumulative dose is associated with complications. For nausea associated with migraine, metoclopramide is still the first line. And if paracetamol doesn't work, then ibuprofen and sumatriptans are second options. Non-steroidals are usually not recommended except in second trimester because their use in early pregnancy is associated with major congenital malformations. And in third trimester, they are associated with risk like oligohydramnios and PDA. And periconceptional NSAID use may increase the risk of neural tube defects, especially in women who are not taking folic acid or their folic acid levels are low. Okay, triptans are now recommended, but you have to use it with caution because abhi tak the data is with the sumatriptans, not with the newer triptans. There are no major congenital malformations reported, but there is some increased risk of PPH and intrauterine growth retardation in small studies. Opioids are not recommended because they are associated with a lot of complications like cardiac arrest, placental insufficiency, preterm births. Ergots are definitely not indicated. In management of nausea and vomiting, metoclopramide is safe for use in pregnancy. Prochlorperazine can be used in lactation, but during pregnancy you have to use it with caution. So this is just a table that still acetaminophen, diphenhydramine, metoclopramide are the first line medications. You can use triptans, but with caution, and usually the data is with sumatriptan. Low-dose aspirin can be used, but not in lactation. And ibuprofen and ondansetron is usually the second line treatment. Similarly, if the headaches are not responding to the first line treatment, you can use steroids for rescue. And similarly, oxycodone and the GPANs, which are new, and the lasmiditan, they are not recommended still because the data is not very much available. Ergots are definitely not recommended. So now coming to the prophylactic treatment, during pregnancy, you have to counsel the patient that you have to follow a good lifestyle. So I think the counseling should start before pregnancy. जैसे मैं जब हम एपिलेप्सी की मैनेजमेंट की बात कर रहे होते हैं खासतौर पे यंग लड़कियों में, तो हम कहते हैं जब वो बच्ची जब भी आती है आपके पास तो आप यू हैव अ लॉट ऑफ ऑप्शंस अवेलेबल, सो प्लीज़ गिव दैट मेडिकेशन जो कि वो लॉन्ग टर्म ले सके कि जब प्रेग्नेंट भी हो तो आपको चेंज ना करना पड़े, क्योंकि वो फिर फर्स्ट 4 हफ्ते तो गुजार के ही आते हैं. तो सिमिलरली सिमिलर टू माइग्रेन, सिमिलरली इन माइग्रेन यू हैव टू इफ़ आपके पास पहले से यंग लड़कियां आ रही हैं तो पहले से उनको काउंसिल करें, एंड दिस डिस्कशन शुड बी पार्ट ऑफ द मैनेजमेंट. And सबसे important है that you have to counsel them that they have to trigger avoidance and lifestyle factors जो हैं they should be considered. तो इसीलिए जो मैंने सबसे पहले बताया था कि अब हम ख़वातीन जिनको एपिलेप्सी वालियों को तो फिर भी हम कुछ वो बताते हैं मॉडिफिकेशंस, तो वो तो हो जाता है, लेकिन सिर्फ सर के दर्द के लिए फैमिली को ये काउंसिल करना कि इनको ना काम करने दें या गिव देम रेस्ट, दे फॉलो अ रूटीन, दैट वी हैव टू आई थिंक शुड बी पार्ट ऑफ आवर एडवोकेसी एंड पब्लिक अवेयरनेस campaigns. So still beta blockers are the first line with the best safety profile. Cyproheptadine is safe, but it is not recommended during lactation. If the patients are not response to beta blockers or you cannot give them, then amitriptyline in a low dose can be an alternative. SSRIs are not recommended because of their risk of gestational hypertension and preeclampsia. Similarly, calcium channel blockers should be used with caution because of high risk of preterm births and low birth weights. And gabapentin is also not recommended. So now we talked a lot about CRGP because CRGP crosses the placenta. The patient should not, the recommendations are that they have to avoid pregnancy for at least 6 months for monoclonal antibodies, and also in nursing women they have to avoid. For GPANs, because these are small molecules, it's advisable to they discontinue for a week before attempting to get pregnant based on the half-life of these agents. But still the data is very limited. So this is also guidelines from UAE, their recent guidelines, in which they have also recommended the same, that the CGRP based therapies should be carefully reviewed and they should be used with caution, and they have to be discontinue when they are planning to conceive. This is one study which is recently published, in which they have shown that atogepant is safe because it's not excreted in large amounts in breast milk, so can be given during breastfeeding, but it's a phase 1 study, so we are waiting for more data to come. Botox is another option. Botox basically inhibits these SNAP25 targets and the SNARE proteins, which are critical for the vesicular function and their neurotransmitter release. And they does not appear to significantly increase the risk of major malformations or adverse pregnancy outcome. This is a recent article in which they have shown that they are relatively safe in patients who are pregnant. So this is another option that we can use. But topiramate, candesartan and valproate are a big no. So this is just a tabulated form in which we have to be cautious when we are using CGRP. Antiepileptics like topiramate and valproate, they are teratogenic, not recommended. Amitriptyline can be used as in low doses if they are not, they cannot take beta blockers. And antihypertensives are in which candesartans and verapamil, they are not recommended. Memantine is not recommended. Botox can be used with caution because now there is data coming out and they show that it's safer option. In nutraceuticals, coenzyme Q10, riboflavin, they are still not, they have to be used in caution. So they are not be recommended. Similarly, pizitofin is also, they have recommended to use it with caution if you don't have any other options available. This is from the Canadian guidelines. So now coming to the non-pharmacological management, which is I think the most important thing, because अभी तक जो guidelines हैं वो कहती हैं the first line of treatment is non-pharmacological.
Time is up, तो आप kindly इसको wrap up कीजिए.
हाँ जी करी, मैं second last हूँ. डॉक्टर जहाँ जेब जो है वो छोटी कर देंगे. ठीक है. Okay, so this is the last one. So recommended physical activity is recommended, and you ask your patients to be do some exercise, be it yoga or simple taking a walk. And it has been shown in different studies that the physical activity decreases the stress, that increases the sleep circulation, decreases the inflammatory mediators, and improves the migraine symptoms and their frequency and their severity. Now there's a lot of data coming on neuromodulation for headache management in pregnancy, and they are found to be safe and effective and well tolerated. Similarly, non-invasive VNS, TENS, and finally the most important thing is education and awareness. So that's important that we, when we are doing public awareness sessions, we need to cover this topic also. And this is another, a nice study that was on pain neuroscience education, which they have, developed a module in which they educate the patients, the neurobiological mechanisms of pain, their fear, misconceptions, and that improves their self-management and decreased their severity of headaches. So overall, in migraine management during pregnancy, the most important thing is that you counsel them to be, do more physical activity, relax, have a balanced diet, follow a routine, and if needed, you use medications, but with caution. So this is just an algorithm that you have to follow. And we just talk about migraine, but you have to, consider also the pregnancy. The patients can have secondary headaches also during pregnancy. And so especially cerebral venous thrombosis and pregnancy-associated strokes and preeclampsia. And then the RCV syndrome, that's and preeclampsia can persist for around 6 weeks into postpartum period. So when you are treating women with migraine, please consider the hormonal influences, what are the basic pathophysiological mechanisms, so you can, target this, the right medications. The management strategies not include just the pharmacological, but the non-pharmacological approaches are more important. And then, we have to work on female-specific trials. We need to work on multidisciplinary care, and we need to use AI and technologies to, predict prediction on work on prediction models. So this is the last one. Sorry, अगर आप ना सुनना चाहें तो ना सुने, क्योंकि this is not part of the management. But menopause and postmenopausal migraine is also, हमारा एक concept है कि बाद में ख़त्म हो जाता है, but still there are women who have migraines in their perimenopause or menopause periods, especially migraine with aura in which the symptoms worsen. HRT can offer benefit, but it has to be individualized, and that has to be discussed with a gynecologist and their, comorbid conditions. Then we have non-hormonal options like SSRIs and SNRIs, which can be effective if we cannot use HRT. So, thank you.